Hi everyone, I'm Julius Kleynhans. I'm the Executive Manager of Social Innovation at the organization Undoing Tax Abuse, OUTA, as most of you know it. And, recently Joburg property owners have been up in arms with regards to this recent property rate hikes. It's really been exorbitant and has affected a lot of people financially. In OUTA's survey that we recently ran, we saw that the property valuations that the city's done has gone up at an average of 44% per property, which is quite significant. And obviously, the city charges property rates on top of that. So some folks have objected against the exorbitant increases within the general valuation role. And the deadline date was on the 5th of May this year. However, a lot of people only got the surprise when they got this July bill and saw their property rates has dramatically increased. And joining me today, I've got Maike Gohl. She's a partner from Schindlers, and she's going to help explain through the processes of what those can see and do in the near future who have objected against the property valuation role. And also for those folks who haven't been able to object or didn't know that they should object, what their rights are and what actions they can take to follow to still lodge a query to the city to readjust those valuations. Thank you so much for joining us, Maike, and tell me, if we can jump into it. If I formally objected before the deadline date of the 5th of May 2023 in the general valuation role, what's the process? What's the next step?
So essentially, the next step is waiting for your objection outcome. So we have been advised that there are a couple of people in Joburg that have already received their objection outcomes, but the majority of people are probably still waiting for their objection outcomes. In my experience, you are looking at waiting between 6 and 18 months for your objection outcome. But once you receive it, it is very important to note the date that is set out at the bottom of your objection if you are not happy with the objection outcome, because that date will tell you your cutoff time period within which to do your appeal, which we will discuss in a little bit. So the reason that it takes the city so long to do or to provide consumers with their objection outcomes is simply because there are quite a small team versus the amount of objections that they've received. I believe that the city did release a statement not too long ago, setting out that there was about 42,000 objections received in comparison to the 956 odd thousand evaluations that they did. So you can imagine that it is just a very, very large number that the city has to work through in order to get the objection outcomes to the public. So it does unfortunately just take a bit of time.
Okay, and as I understand it, when you participate in this process, you can get feedback that your property rates or your valuation has reduced or it's increased, completely rejected. And I just want to know, so you spoke about an appeal process. Should people appeal? Can they just hang back, do nothing? What's your advice?
I would highly recommend appealing if you are not happy with the outcome that you've received from the city. So let's say the outcome you get is exactly the same as the value was on the 2023 GV, despite your objection, then obviously I'm assuming you won't be happy. In such an instance, I would suggest appealing. Or the other time that is incredibly important to make an appeal, even if you are happy with the outcome of the property, is if the value of the property increased or decreased by more than 10%. The reason that I say this is because if the value increased or decreased by more than 10% on your objection outcome, it means that the property is going to go on an automatic review. Now, that automatic review is a process that is only held between the Valuations Appeal Board and the city's valuer. You, as a member of the public and the owner of the property, would not be entitled to make any representations at that review hearing. So And with regard to the amount of objections that the city receives and the amount of appeals that they receive, it can take up to 3 to 5 years in order for your review to be heard. So you might not have an instantaneous outcome to that and negative effect of that, but you could then, in a period of 5 years, receive an invoice with a whole bunch of backdated charges where they've reversed the decrease in the value or the increase in the value of your property, which would obviously not be a happy day for anyone.
Okay, no, interesting. So you know, if it's been rejected, so you mean then you can go into the appeal process?
Yes.
Okay, so then there's this other thing that they spoken about. You know, what if a property valuation has increased or decreased by about 10% following this objection process? So this is on the notice now that the city has either pushed it up by 10% or decreased it. What does that mean, and what now?
Okay, so it's very important to take note of that 10% increase or decrease. If it's more than 10% as well, the 10% is the lowest threshold of the increase or the decrease. If you had a decrease or an increase of more than 10%, the property would automatically go through a review process. This is obviously to protect the City of Johannesburg from any clerical errors or human errors, in which those increases or decreases in valuation would go to the Valuations Appeal Board in order for them to determine whether that increase or decrease is correct. Now, the problem with the properties going on an automatic review process is that the public is not entitled to make representations at this internal or automatic review process. Whereas with an appeal process, you are entitled to make representations. And it's the same board that hears both the internal or the automatic review and your appeal process. So we encourage the public to always do an appeal if there was an increase or a decrease of more than 10% in the value of their property on their objection outcomes, because at least at the appeals process, you can make representations to the city and to the Valuations Appeal Board to confirm that value, rather than leaving it to fate. And in 3-4 years' time, when the Valuations Appeal Board eventually gets round to hearing the automatic review process, getting another shock on your invoices because you don't get to know when this review is going to be held or what the outcome of it is. Well, technically, they should inform you of what the outcome of such a process is, but as we see with the general valuation role, it's very often that the homeowners or the property owners are not informed of these decisions. And the first time they see it is when they get these massive rates bills. So it's very important to know about that, specifically, just pin that 10% in the back of your head. If there is an increase or decrease of more than 10%, to rather just do the appeal, have that outcome confirmed in the appeal hearing, and then you won't have to go through that review process, because the Valuations Appeal Board that would hear your appeal is the same board that would be making the decision with regard to your review.
Yeah, Maike, thanks for that. So emphasizing appeal, people, it's very important to appeal, because otherwise the player and the referee will be the judge of what's going to happen on that outcome, and you're not part of that. Okay, that makes sense. So take me through it. You know, now I've got this notice, and I see it's 10%, and I see I've got the ability to appeal. What do I do? Because I haven't a clue. So who do I contact? Can someone help me with that? What's it going to cost?
So there's various different people that you can contact for assistance with this. Some of those being attorneys that specialize in municipal law. You can also approach valuations professionals, so someone that actually, you know, specializes in doing valuations of properties. They are also very well versed in doing appeals on behalf of consumers. Alternatively, you could go to the valuations department at the city to ask for assistance. But essentially what this process is with at the beginning process of the appeal is to take the form that you can find on the City of Johannesburg's website, which is labeled as an appeal form. Just be careful that you fill in the correct form and that it is the form for an appeal, and that it is the correct property type. I believe I do stand under correction because I haven't seen the current appeal forms, but in the past they've had 3 different types of forms for different types of properties. So you have one for residential properties, one for business properties, and one for agricultural properties. And then there's sub categories to those. So just make sure that you, of the 3 forms, if there are still 3 forms this year, that you select the correct form and fill in that form, and add any evidence that you have that substantiates the value or the category that your property should be in. And then you submit that to the city, either by hand, or there's a Valuations Inquiries email address that you can find on their website as well. I believe it's valuationsinquiries@joburg.org.za, but I do stand under correction on that, to which you can then email your appeal. And then you should get an appeal reference number, similar to the objection reference number that you would have received when you did your online objection before the 5th of May. And that reference number you must keep track of, because if you want to follow up with the city with regard to your appeal, then that is the reference number that you need to quote to the city. Generally, once you get your objection outcome notice, you have 30 days within which to lodge your appeal. And then it's a hurry up and wait situation. You only have 30 days to submit your appeal, but in order for, you then sit and wait for the Valuations Appeal Board to actually convene your hearing, at which you would be able to make representations to justify why the value or category of your property was incorrectly placed on the general valuation roll. In my experience, it unfortunately can take anything from 2 to 6 years for that Valuations Appeal Board hearing to be convened. So that's why I say it's a hurry up and wait situation. We don't know how the Valuations Appeal Board for the 2023 GV, when they'll be constituted and how long, how many of them there will be. Potentially they have more than one board this time. We don't know. But in the past, they've only had one board to deal with all of the appeals and reviews in the jurisdiction. And unfortunately, because it's only one board, it does take a lot of time.
Okay, so one has to then represent your case there. Okay, and it makes sense. So just from a cost implication, I think just listening to what you're saying, one almost gets deflated because it takes so much time, and the city wants you to pay the money, and all this pressure, and it's not like it's the best financial economic times we're living in.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if an increase goes into an appeal, it obviously substantiates quite a high amount that you're paying for rates. And instead of appealing and paying someone professional to do the work, it's sometimes the easy way out not to appeal at all. But I think the mistake that we make is that you suck up the 500 Rand or 1,500 Rand a month that you pay additionally, without thinking about the compounding effect that you're paying tens of thousands of rands over the period of the valuation, instead of just the 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 Rand to get a professional to do the appeal on your behalf. Is that the case? Help me with that.
In a lot of instances, it is definitely worth rather forking out the money for a professional to assist you. But you also don't have to have a professional assist you. You can go and make those representations yourself. Obviously, if you have someone that is experienced in these scenarios and the appeal board hearing specifically, it does make it easier, especially if it's a valuations issue, to have a professional valuer substantiate why they've said what the value of your property should be. It does make your life a lot easier. And if it's a high value property, then it's definitely worth it. If it's not as high value a property, but it's going to have a big impact on your pocket at the end of the day, because the subsistence of the 2023 GV will probably be about 5 years. So even if we're talking 500 Rand a month over the 5-year period, like you said, you're going to pay an additional couple of tens of thousands of rands. So it is a value call that everyone would need to make, also bearing in mind that the tariffs increase every single year. So this year it might be X amount, but next year it'll be X times 2 because the tariff has gone up. So it is important to take these, these objections and appeals seriously, because you can really be doing yourself a disservice if you don't do the necessary or pay a professional to assist you with regard to that. So I would say, yes, it's a value call in every instance, because every property owner has a different depth of pocket, but over the long term it probably will be worth paying someone to assist you with it. What the costs of it would be, that's a little bit more difficult to answer, because every case has its own merits. I do know that commercial properties, if we're talking about a professional valuer assisting you, they do charge slightly more to value commercial properties versus residential properties, and each valuer has their own fee structure, very much like attorneys have their own fee structure. So it's very difficult for me to tell you what their charges would be. But if you are able to afford to pay them to do a proper valuation of your property, that is also the best evidence that you could potentially have to actually disprove the city's valuation. So, and they would then also be able to actually be at the Valuations Appeal Board hearing on your behalf and make representations on your behalf to make sure that your value is as it should be per their valuation.
Okay, no, thank you. So I think then, just from a person who have objected, in summary, we've objected. Now we're waiting for a notice from the city. When I receive that notice, I need to determine whether it's been reasonable or not. If it's been, if it's above 10% or below 10%, that it's been adjusted. I need to appeal. People have to appeal to ensure that it just doesn't go and review, that they can do representation. And the smart way to do this, obviously you have to do it within a 30-day time frame, but it is smart to get a professional valuer or an attorney or someone to assist you. But yeah, you need to determine whether you want to go do the representation yourself or not. Thanks, Mike. I think then, for those people who did not object, in the general valuation role, and just got this nightmare of a bill, and all of a sudden they feel so helpless and not necessarily know what to do and how to do. I think if we can dig into that a bit, there's this thing called the Section 78 query. Property owners basically who have not objected but believe that the property has been incorrectly valued still have an avenue to request the city or the municipality to reconsider the valuation of such a property. And then you need to somehow qualify to do this. Obviously, as I understand it, you can only do that if you haven't objected, in the general valuation role. And then there's some specific outlines. I just want to read through it quick that I've got, that the city said, if a property was incorrectly omitted from the valuation roll or included in a municipality after the last general valuation roll, or subdivided or consolidated substantially incorrectly valued during the last general valuation, property that must be revalued for any other exceptional reason, of which the category has been changed potentially, and the value of which was incorrectly recorded in the valuation roll because of a clerical or typing error. I think a lot of people feel that might be the issue on their bills. But tell me, what does a property owner need to do if they haven't objected?
Okay, so we call it, and the city calls it, a Section 78 query process. Essentially, the City of Johannesburg has specific forms that you need to fill in order to submit your Section 78 query. But essentially what your Section 78 query does is it asks the city to place your property onto the next supplementary valuation roll. So during the subsistence of the 2023 general valuation roll, there will be at least one supplementary roll per year. The city is able to have more than one per year, but they have to have a minimum of one per year. And what you're then doing is asking them to place your property on one of those supplementary valuation rolls. And then once the supplementary valuation roll opens, you can then follow the objection process that we described earlier. So you first do your objection, wait for your objection outcome. If you're happy with the outcome, but it's more than 10%, still do an appeal. If you're unhappy with the outcome, do an appeal, and then you wait for your valuation appeal board hearing, and then you make representations at the hearing and see what the outcome is of that.
So I see that, from a Section 78 query, there's some specific information that still needs to be submitted, whether it's residential property or business property. And from a residential property point of view, just to highlight some of the information that's required, and it's obviously probably in those documents that you abstract or get from the city when you lodge a query like this, it's market evidence, a list of sold properties within the immediate area as at the date of 1st July 2022, the details of this specific property, the number of bedrooms and bathrooms, the improvements on the property, swimming pool, etc., those kind of value adds, the age of the improvements, any adverse conditions that might affect the value of the property, the size of the buildings, the building types like garage, granny flat, and any other additional information to motivate the valuation report. And there's specific people you need to engage with or send an email to inquire these information. But tell us a bit more on the process. So now that I've done this and I've submitted the information, how long will it take? And again, who can people engage with to help them potentially cost if you can?
So again, the same people that can assist you with your appeal, so attorneys that are well versed in municipal law and valuers. Sometimes managing agents for body corporates and stuff are also well versed in this, and they can potentially assist. There's various people. A quick Google should give you an answer as to who can really assist you. Obviously, just make sure that whoever you speak to, who you found on Google, is actually reputable and knows what they're doing.
Can I quickly ask you there? So a lot of people have had the conception of a valuation expert and I suppose just someone who sells properties. So there's a distinct difference between the two.
Yes, so you can submit an estate agent's report to substantiate what you believe the value of your property should be. But the weight that an estate agent's report carries in the decision that the city would make or in the valuations appeal board is not going to carry as well as that of a professional valuer. Because a professional valuer has to study. I mean, they have a university degree. They then have to do an internship for a period of time before they can qualify as a professional valuer. And there is also a board that regulates professional valuers' conduct. So it is a profession, and they are highly qualified, generally highly qualified individuals that can, really assist you. And there's a reason that you pay these people versus estate agents doing it for free. Obviously, I mean, I understand that not everyone has the budget to pay a professional valuer. So if you are going to go the route of getting an estate agent to do a valuation for you, rather get more than one estate agent from different estate agencies to assist you. I would suggest a minimum of 3 reports, and then you kind of take the median value between those minimum of 3 reports, and you use that value as a substantiation of what your value should be. You just do need to bear in mind that I don't know if you'll be successful with an estate agent's valuation report. I know, for example, in the City of Cape Town, who also just lately had their general valuation roll, the City of Cape Town has advised that they will not accept automated valuations, like from Lightstone or Windeed. So the weight of those are considered even less than those of estate agents. with the highest form of value being that of a professional valuer.
Well, that's good insights. Thanks. And sorry, so bringing you back to the other question. So how long this Section 78 query, how long will it take, and what's the process going forward if we had to lodge one now?
So it depends on when you lodge your Section 78 query, because you're essentially going to be waiting for the next supplementary valuation roll to be opened. And the city honestly opens them at any time in the year. So I can't even tell you, generally it's at this time of year. In the 2018 journal valuation roll, we often saw them open them in May. But there's no guarantee that there'll be one in May. I know that the last supplementary valuation roll for the 2018 general valuation roll has been announced as being in September this year. But I don't know if they've announced one yet. As far as I'm aware, they haven't for the 2023 general valuation roll. So it very often depends on what time of year you approach someone to assist you, or you decide to approach the city with your Section 78 query, because then you just simply need to wait for the supplementary valuation roll to open in order for you to be able to do your objection.
Okay, lovely. Now, the big question, I've objected, or I've lodged a query, must I pay the additional amount that the city is charging me now?
Okay, so I always say to my clients that come to me for assistance with this, that it depends on whether you want to be a cowboy or not. So if you want to be a cowboy and you are not risk averse, then you can make payment to the city of an amount calculated on the value or on the category that you believe your property should be. So the reason I'm saying that that is more of a cowboy move is because we have specifically asked the city whether or not they're going to start taking adverse action against consumers that have objected and are not making payment as per their rates accounts, and they have confirmed that they are. This is because of their interpretation of the Municipal Property Rates Act, which is the legislation that regulates this entire process that we're talking about today. And in terms of that act, it does say that rates must be paid irrespective of an objection or appeal being lodged. Now, we don't necessarily agree with the city's interpretation, because we believe as long as you are making payment of the undisputed amounts, you are satisfying the requirements of that section. But the city is firmly of the view that it must be the rates as they've been billed. So if you're making payment of the full amount and you don't agree with that, if you were to be successful with your objection or your appeal process, the city would have to credit you the amount that they overbilled you based on the incorrect valuation or categorization. So if you have it within your budget and you don't feel like being harassed by debt collection attorneys and or having your services disconnected, then you can take that option. Or you can take the more cowboy approach and only make payments of the charges as per your valuation or category that you believe it should be. But obviously it needs to be recalculated every year based on the increases in tariff as well. But as long as you're making payments of those, you should be, technically protected from any adverse action. But we do know that the city has advised that they will still be issuing disconnection notices and the like for outstanding rates, even if there is an objection or appeal process underway.
Okay, so just again, to make it clear, I think even in this discussion, what we don't recommend and try to lobby for is for people not to pay. We actually seeking the city to just be reasonable and fair to its residents. And I think that is very important. So we're not against paying rates and taxes. Obviously, we're definitely for paying for quality services. But yeah, we also want to ensure that whatever increases take place, that it's reasonable, affordable, and fair to its residents, and that it's sustainable to ensure that the city can be healthy and maintain its services in the long run. Maike Gohl, anything else that you think you wanted to mention?
No, I just wanted to say good luck to all property owners in Joburg, because I know this is a frustrating process, especially because it takes so long.
Maike Gohl from Schindlers, thank you so much for your time, and it was really special for you to give these insights and share some expert knowledge with the viewers, and I hope it can help a lot of people. Thank you so much.
Thank you.